Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Being here tonight, you and we are part of history. Never again will there be an inaugural Startup Grind Columbia Mid-Maryland chapter inaugural event. So, please consider yourselves part of a very elite group. My first responsibility as chapter director is to officially bless everyone. You are now and for herever after going to be known as OCGs, Original Columbia Grinders. First and foremost, I would like to thank my founding partners. First and foremost, I would like to thank Tracy Turner and Larry Tweel from Howard Tech Council, Maryland Center for Entrepreneurship, and HCEDA. I would like for you both to please come up.
6 months ago this evening, this town was a ghost town because of a rain event we had the prior evening. And that we are actually here celebrating an event like this is an accomplishment to, the county and the folks at Public Works who, filled in the holes, and the guys that run this place, Rick Winters and Tim Kinjerski, who actually rebuilt, Elegant Mills so that they could actually be open to serve customers, and the rest of the merchants on Main Street. Over 70 businesses have reopened, and it is a testament to the resilience of this town and the collaboration of the county and the state and the federal government. So please give those folks a hand, because really, This is a gem of a town, and it is a special place in Howard County. So thank you very much for coming out tonight and supporting the merchants. And if you have a chance, walk down the street and see the shops that are open. So thank you for coming out. But back to tonight's event. The Howard County is a special place to have a business, have a technology, and have an environment that supports that. And the mission of the Howard Tech Council to lead, learn, collaborate, and engage, matches perfectly with what Startup Grind is all about. And if we can learn some lessons from some entrepreneurs who have been there, and how do we continue to build this ecosystem? And actually, failure is not always a bad thing. Chris pointed out the failure rate. Failure is not always a bad thing, because good things are learned from that, and it makes us smarter and better. And as part of the ecosystem that we are trying to build here, and I would be remiss if I didn't recognize an important part of that entrepreneurship and startup ecosystem is TEDCO, and the role that TEDCO plays. And John Wassilison, president of TEDCO, the state's basically small business investment arm that helps small businesses grow their dreams into reality. They are headquartered here in Howard County, which I think speaks to the environment here in Howard County. So we're very excited about the collaboration between the Tech Council and Startup Grind, and how you add to that education and ecosystem and collaboration and network that makes technology communities successful. So thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for, Chris, your leadership on Startup Grind, and we're proud to be a partner. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. And just so you know, one of the things that I wanted to do was to make sure that we held as many events here at Elegant Mills as we possibly could, because again, I want to do my small part in helping to bring business back down to the Main Street area. And I'm happy to say that we will be holding at least our first 4 events down here. I would like to recognize John Wesseling and his TEDCO team. John, thank you so much for coming out. All of you, please stand up. Gentlemen, I'd like to thank Mr. Stephen Babcock, who is a lead writer for the online publication called Technically Baltimore. Did a wonderful article on us about a week ago at the last minute. He is all things in the tech world in this region. I strongly suggest you go out and subscribe online. It's free. He'd love to have your readership eyes. I would also like to recognize, and I think I saw him here, is Mr. Ron Smeltzer here? There he is, the man with the plan, the head wrangler, the chief poobah, chief cook and bottle washer of the Tech Breakfast and Tech Combustion Organization. He puts on phenomenal tech-oriented breakfasts. Last but not least, I would like to introduce you to two phenomenal individuals who you are going to be seeing a lot of as we grow Startup Grind. Talia Fletcher and Joy Adams, both of whom I met 2 weeks ago at a Howard Tech event. I knew Talia a little bit. I didn't know Joy, and they came up and said, we would like to be involved. I said, that's probably the worst thing that you could ever say to me. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I've already gone too long. It's now time for me to introduce our featured guest. Mr. Tien Wong is a highly successful super entrepreneur, investor, CEO, and an entrepreneurship evangelist in this region. He's chairman of Tech 2000 Inc., a Virginia-based ed tech company. Hold on to your hats, folks. Chairman of Lore Systems Inc., a Virginia IT services company which provides managed holding IT support, virtual CIO, and cloud computing solutions. He's chairman and CEO of OPUS8 Inc., a private investment and strategic advisory firm specializing in middle market buyouts and venture capital investments. He's founder and host of the Big Idea CONNECTpreneur Forum, a community of over 5,000 founders, CEOs, angels, VCs, CXOs, and other business leaders in the Mid-Atlantic region. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. He also co-founded and served as chairman and CEO of CyberRep Inc., that was later acquired by Affiliated Computer Services, a Fortune 500 company. He's provided industry commentary to ABC, Fox, NBC, CNBC, Maryland Public Television, and China's CCTV networks, as well as publishing articles for Time, The Washington Post, and Success Magazine. Tien received the 2001 Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award from Greater Washington and the 2003 Ernst & Young Performance Excellence Award. He was inducted into the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Hall of Fame. He is a 2012-2013 Washington Business Journal Power 100 selection. And guys, I think you get the point. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our featured guest, Mr. Tien Wong. Please give him a nice round of applause. Okay, have a seat.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad you had a January 31st deadline.
Well,
he was desperate, so I volunteered.
Actually, no. I have known of Tien and met him a couple times very briefly, but as you could see from his bio, his reputation and his records speak for themselves, and I can tell you that he is a warm, wonderful, giving human being, and I didn't want anybody else to be my inaugural speaker except him. And it was interesting because I shot him an email, and I really didn't expect to hear back. Well, no sooner did I hit the send button, 30 seconds later there was a response, I'm all in. So Tien, thank you very much.
Well, I'm honored because I've heard about Startup Grind from Brian Park, who has the DC, Virginia region, and also just watching lots of videos on YouTube that are hosted by Startup Grind. So I'm just really honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
What I'd like to start out with, Tien, is take us back. Take us way back to the beginning. Where did you grow up? Where were you born?
I'm from Lakewood, New Jersey, the Jersey Shore. I don't know if anyone's from Jersey, but we have great Dunkin' Donuts coffee and the best pizza in the world. And my parents were both immigrants. So my dad came from China, my mom came from Malaysia. They're all native Chinese, and just a typical immigrant upbringing. My father was he was an engineer at Bendix and wound up quitting to start a Chinese restaurant and built a second and a third one. And my mom was a homemaker, and then she set up her own travel agency. So just being the child of entrepreneurs. So that was my training, just kind of working in the restaurant at the age of 10 and dealing with customer service issues. And I didn't know the corporate life. I didn't know IBM or working for banks or whatever. So just a classic immigrant upbringing.
I do have to ask this. When you, and I'm guilty of this too, when you and I speak, I want to make sure we don't leave these guys out as well, okay?
Got it.
Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to leave you out. So what kinds of activity, all right, you were involved in your family's businesses from the age of 10. What other activities did you do as a kid?
Work-wise or?
Work-wise, play-wise,
yeah,
were you into sports?
Yes, I was. I was very much into sports. I was a competitive tennis player.
Okay.
So I wound up, being pretty decent at tennis at the high school level, and I played 1 year in college. And so between tennis, working in my dad's restaurant, I didn't have a lot of time to, and studying, of course, I didn't have a lot of time to get in trouble. So my parents were smart. They had me working in the restaurant on Friday and Saturday night all through high school, and I thought I was making money, but they knew what they were doing. So I didn't learn that lesson with my kids, but
isn't there something called minimum wage?
Not in a Chinese restaurant. You basically make
point made.
Basically make what your parents pay you, and
point made.
You hope for the best.
Tell us about your family, your life here now. What brought you? I know you went to Dartmouth. Yes. What took you to Dartmouth?
Well, I wanted to get into a good school, and it was one of the best schools I got into. And I was interested in two schools, Dartmouth or Brown, and my parents wanted me to be in the countryside, in the mountains, where I couldn't get in trouble. So they basically helped me make the decision. So. It's funny, I'm really happy I went there. It was a great experience. I have great friends, and I'm still in touch with a lot of people from that community. But it was a great environment. I really, really enjoyed it. I had 3 businesses in college. That's when I sort of applied what I learned at the dinner table and in the Chinese restaurant. I had a Chinese food delivery service, which Hanover, New Hampshire is a very small town, a tiny town, and there's one Chinese restaurant. It's 15 minutes away, but more importantly, back in the 1980s, early 80s, all the restaurants closed at about 10 p.m. So, and Dartmouth was known as a big drinking school, and so we would open at midnight. And we served 2 things. We had fried rice and egg rolls, and we had a toaster oven in the dorm room, and we heated it up and had somebody deliver the food, and it was pretty good. We were open from midnight till like 4 in the morning. Yeah.
In other words, a rather captive audience.
Yeah, very captive, and they had no choice. There was price inelasticity, as my economics professor would say. So
extreme price inelasticity.
Yes, absolutely.
You're married.
Yes.
I believe you live in the Potomac area, right?
Yeah, Chevy Chase.
Chevy Chase,
Maryland,
okay.
Right outside the district.
And your kids?
So I have a son who is a senior at Boston College, a daughter who's a junior at University of South Carolina, and another daughter who's a sophomore in high school. And I met my wife here in Washington. I came to D.C. When I was a senior in college. I did an internship with my senator, who was Bill Bradley, the great New York Knicks player. He was a senator from New Jersey. I was very lucky to get an internship there. I fell in love with Washington, and I said, I want to live here. So after college, I did 1 year in New York running a startup with a friend of mine, one of my best friends. It failed miserably. and had nothing better to do, so I came to DC, got a job in commercial real estate, and I was telling somebody earlier that Mia, that it was my best job ever, the commercial real estate job that I had. So,
Okay.
but I've been here since 1985. Yeah.
Okay. I know you're involved in an incredible amount of things. Do you do any volunteer work with anyone? I believe you're on the board of advisors for is it the National Association for Teaching Entrepreneurship? Am I getting that right?
Yes.
You were, okay.
Yes.
And you were also on the board of trustees or the board of directors for the Baltimore Symphony?
Yes, I was, right. Not in a few years.
Okay. What are you doing in that regard now?
So I spent the day at Georgetown University. I'm an entrepreneur in residence at the McDonough School of Business. So I work with Jeff Reed. I was there all day. And I work with students, professors, startups in that ecosystem. My wife and I support children's charities. We're very involved with Catholic charities. I was involved with Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship, which teaches entrepreneurship education in underprivileged children in high schools. And over the years, we've been involved in a lot of stuff like that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's lay the groundwork for what is an incredible career. Take us back to, you've had businesses basically since you were 10 years old. So I guess I don't have to really ask you where the entrepreneurial bug came from. You got out of Dartmouth. Did any of those businesses while you were in Dartmouth carry over? I believe you said one of them did. But did any of the others carry over? And then what got you what really launched you going forward?
Yeah, so the Chinese food delivery service I sold to a fraternity brother of mine. So he upgraded and used a fraternity kitchen as a kitchen instead of a dorm room. I had a custom printed painter hat business that we would wholesale as well as retail on the streets. And that business, actually, another fraternity brother of mine took over that business. So yeah, we had a little legacy going on. It was okay. It was enjoyable. Yeah.
Okay. So you got to DC, and that is really where the foundation of your major businesses started. Am I correct?
Yeah, I got a job in commercial real estate. I worked for three companies. I worked for CB Richard Ellis, and I worked for a bank, Philadelphia bank, that's no longer in business, and then I worked for a hotel investment and management syndicator that I'm not sure if they're still in business, but I was in the commercial real estate field and connected with one friend who was in commercial real estate and another friend who was working as a wealth manager. And the three of us, we were entrepreneurial. We didn't want to work for a company. We wanted to spread our wings. We were all single at the time in our late 20s. It wasn't about money at all. It was about freedom, and it was about controlling our own destiny. And we looked at different things. We looked at getting into real estate and rehabbing homes. We looked at buying Jerry's Pizza franchise, but being from New Jersey, I put the nix on that because it doesn't compare to New Jersey pizza. But we wound up settling. The three of us realized, and this is like really the first lesson that we didn't really know, but it was a lesson, and that is you have to find a pain that's really painful to somebody and try to fill that need. And the pain that the three of us shared, all three of us were in sales, and we shared one pain, which was we hated making cold calls. Absolutely hated calling people cold. Yeah. Back then there was no email, there was no computers, it was all phone. You know, my first job at CB, they said, here's your desk, here's a phone, and here's a phone book. Yep. Go make money. That's basically, how we used to do it in the old days for you young guys out there. But so we all hated making cold calls. So we said, why don't we set up a business to make cold calls for people? Because if we hate it, probably everybody hates it. So we started, we hired three friends from the real estate industry. We started in the fall of '91 when the commercial real estate industry was actually coming down a little bit. I hired three friends from commercial real estate, gave them a phone book and said, go find us some customers of people that don't want to make phone calls. And one of our salespeople, within the first 2 weeks of business, they cold called Pepco. Pepco is the electric utility company in DC and Maryland. And Pepco's like, hey, this is really cool, guys. But the problem is we don't need anyone to make phone calls. but we do need someone to take phone calls. And we said, we do that too. And this was our first customer. So, right, lesson number 2 is if you have an opportunity, you have to pivot to that opportunity.
Take it.
So we took it. Pepco put us in business. We had a great contract with them. I don't know, it was like a 4-year relationship, but the cash flow from that Pepco contract gave us the runway to build a services. It was a services business, not a product company.
And that was CyberRep.
CyberRep. It was called Unitel at the time.
Okay, Unitel.
Yeah, and we were. This was in '91, so we did change the name to CyberRep.com in 2000 because we wanted to go public. And after the meltdown, we changed our name from CyberRep.com back to CyberRep.
Okay.
But it was Unitel Corporation at the time. Yeah.
And then you had a very successful exit out of there when you sold to Affiliated Computer Services?
ACS, yeah.
Okay. Did you take any time off to rest and relax, or did you go right into your next venture?
No, I did not take any time off, really. We built the business. It was a lot of luck, a lot of great customers, some great employees that we hired, and we wound up building an $80 million company with 2,000 employees and sold it for a premium to the public comps. We did look at going public back in the spring of 2000, which was probably the worst time to do it. We sold the business in January of 2003. And ACS was a public company at the time, Fortune 500. They were subsequently acquired by Xerox.
Right.
So my company now is almost a $2 billion unit of Xerox. And a lot of the senior managers in that were my guys that I remember hiring them when they were
They're still there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And some of them that are no longer there have done amazing things. Like they've gone on to run public companies. They've gone on to start businesses of their own. And very, very amazing group of people that we had working for us. Yeah.
So we've kind of covered up to you getting here and your first huge major, I'll call it success, okay? Tell us about the lessons that you've learned up until that point about entrepreneurship, failure, the fears, the pressures, the anxieties. What did you learn, and what could you share with our audience?
We learned so much. When we started the business, we were 30 years old. And when we exited the business, when we started the business, we were about 29 years old. When we exited, we were 40, just about 40. And we didn't know what we were doing. I think the one thing we did, there were 3 founders originally, and we were self-aware enough to know that 2 could outnumber 1. So the first rule we ever made in the company was, if we ever have an argument where it's 2 versus 1 on a serious matter, we stay in the room until we get to 3 versus 0. So we said every major decision, every hire, every financing decision, whatever, has to be unanimous 3-0. We have many 3 a.m. nights. So I think dealing with an odd number partnership, we didn't know any better. That was just our common sense, Another thing we learned was being from the commercial real estate business, which really attracts high quality people. It's a very competitive industry. The call center industry, on the other hand, was not very sophisticated. So the stuff that we brought to the table in terms of the quality of service, the attention to detail, taking care of our employees, giving 401ks and full benefits to hourly employees making 4.25. We were giving full benefit. We didn't know any better. We made our reps wear ties to work. These are phone reps answering the phone. And basically, we were doing what we only knew how to do in an industry that really didn't have that level of sophistication, and it paid off for us. I used to tell my guys, we just want to be a B+ company because we're in a C industry. You don't want to be an A because then you go out of business trying to be an A. And you don't want to be a C because it's too competitive, but you want to be like a BB+. We want to sell Cadillacs at a Chevy price. So that was a really key learning for us as we built the business. And again, we didn't know that. We just kind of happened into it. So, sometimes it's good to be ignorant, to be honest with you. You do things that today I would, you do things that you don't have the baggage of knowing too much to affect how you do things. So I think being ignorant could actually be a positive sometimes. Or being young and naive and not knowing everything, it really helps a lot.
Agreed. Now, when it was the three of you, and at what point did you guys begin to start thinking about, we got to start building out the organization, that it's too much for us as three people to handle? And what went through your thinking in the process of saying, now how in the devil do we scale this? How, what's our corporate culture? What do we do next? Talk us through that a little bit.
I mean, how many of you guys are entrepreneurs that run your own businesses? Is it so about a third to half the room? The truth, we really didn't know what we were doing. We just basically tried to do the best job we could. The fundamental principle of our business was the number one thing we had to do is take care of the customer. That was over everything, over our employees, over everything. You have to take care of the customer. So a big mistake we made. Well, we did buy out our third partner. We had a difference of opinion, and my partner Doug Pally, who I wound up being with, we wanted to reinvest heavily in the company, and our third partner didn't, so we bought him out. So it was really two of us then. But one of the big mistakes we made was we didn't hire high quality talent fast enough, because we had the kind of control syndrome. We didn't want to let go. We didn't trust who could do the business better than us. There were a lot of those doubts, and we just had to work through it. And we had a lot of bad hires along the way. But we didn't know to do that. We didn't know what to look for. I mean, when we hired people, the one thing we really looked for was someone who a very service-oriented mentality. So one of the traits we looked at, and we loved restaurant people, loved it. I mean, not just because I was a restaurant guy, but I know that if you worked in a restaurant business, you understand the customer. So we loved restaurant people, we loved retail people. So it was kind of blinders. We wanted to hire people, managers at our company that shared our absolute obsession with making the customer happy. And then we built off of that one pillar. And then we landed a couple of very large customers, and I think because we did a good job for them, they wound up growing. Like in the call center industry, just like a lot of services industries, if you do a great job for an enterprise customer, they'll just give you more and more business. It happened with us with Nextel, with Sprint, with Microsoft, with Merck, with so many of our enterprise customers. If you do a great job, because again, if you're doing a B plus job in an industry that's a C, you're going to stand out and get business. So it wasn't until we hired really some gray-haired guys that guys that were older.
Thanks.
They were older than us, more experienced than us. They'd worked for competitor companies, and they kind of helped us get to that sort of professionalization, that institutionalization level. I got to give credit to Mike Morrow, who's now running a very large call center down in Florida. Mike came to us from a competitor in Miami, and he was our chief operating officer, and he was also a process engineer. He learned TQM at Lockheed, so he was a very, very process-oriented guy, and he brought all that stuff to the table. And I got to tell you, we were very lucky to have him, to have found him, and to have hired him, and to have had him really get us in a position where we could really grow. And to this day, as a $2 billion unit of Xerox, a lot of the things that Mike put in place back in 1998 are still there. The meeting structures, unbelievable that what he built when we were 20, 30, 40, 50 million is now still being used at a $2 billion unit. Really speaks a lot to him. So, yeah.
It was the three of you. You had a great idea. You got some initial market traction. How long did you bootstrap?
So the three founders went into credit card debt. We were, like I said earlier, we were single, no kids, $50K each. So $150K of working capital from our credit card lines. So when I got married a few years later, my wife had a much more infinitely higher net worth than mine because I was negative. So she took a chance. Right? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? The partner is critical. But the other thing I mentioned, Pepco was our customer. Pepco wanted 10 employees on the phone at 8 hours a day or 12 hours a day. But they didn't want to pay. They paid in 30 days. So we're thinking, how are we going to fund 10 employees for 30 days? And so we came up with an ingenious idea. We basically gave Pepco 3 prices. We said, if you don't give us a deposit, then we can bill you in 7-day cycles and you have to pay on receipt. But if you put up a big deposit, I think it was like 60 or 70K, then we'll bill you in 30 and you still have to pay in like 15. So that 70K was enough to float 6 weeks of payroll. So when I talk to young entrepreneurs and they're talking about raising venture capital, that's like the investor of last resort. The investor of first resort is your customer who will, your vendor, but also your customer who will put up a deposit. So I don't know why Pepco did it. I don't know what they were thinking about. It wasn't an industry standard term, but like I said, luck is important. It was very lucky we had a good buyer at Pepco that did that. So we used Pepco's deposit as working capital. Yeah.
You raise a very interesting point and something that I learned very early on, and that is that venture capital truly is the capital of last resort.
Oh, yeah.
That I know for me it was always beg, borrow, and steal. Not steal, but beg, borrow, barter, plead,
Yes.
to do everything that you can to keep it within the founders. Because the minute you take outside capital, in practicality, it no longer becomes your company. It becomes somebody else's company that you happen to be running.
Yes.
And that is a mindset that I try to, teach entrepreneurs and small businesses. Don't go there unless it's absolutely necessary.
Right. I think they just read too much press. There's so much glamour with raising money. People announce when they raise money. They don't realize when you raise money, dude, that is when it starts. That's when your job starts. And what I tell entrepreneurs is, in your meeting with a VC, ask them what % of your portfolio companies no longer have the original CEO. In other words, what are my chances of being fired? And it's well over 50%, at least from a few of the VCs, several of the VCs I know in DC. So basically I tell these guys, if you take money from a VC, you got a 50-50 shot at losing your job within 3 years. So if you're sure you want to do it, God bless you. But, a lot of people say, I need the money. Maybe they do, but oftentimes if they got creative, they wouldn't need it, I can see for a biotech company or a company where you have no revenue at all, but a lot of guys have been very successful building services companies and then spinning off products out of them. Paul Opalak at Noblestar, with Riverbed. Look at Sid Banerjee over at Clarabridge is another great example. Lots of examples of guys that built, sort of funded their products using cash flow from their existing services business. So there's nothing wrong being a services business. You make a nice cash flow and you have time to get your crap together before you go to the big show with a VC. That's just my opinion on it. Unless it's a very experienced serial entrepreneur who's already raised, multiple rounds of capital and who's had some successful exits, then they absolutely know what they're doing. So those guys, they're real professionals. So,
but if you're a first timer with a company that is either pre-revenue just at revenue, or maybe you're cash flow positive but profit negative, and you approach the VC for the first time, it literally is walking into a Shark Tank, literally and figuratively.
Yeah. Yes.
So
I totally agree. Yeah.
So it sounds like one big lesson that hopefully we can all walk away from, and that is entrepreneurship is all about being creative, and being creative in unconventional ways to be able to move your dream forward. Maybe I didn't say that right, but hopefully it came out okay.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So it sounds like that was kind of the pattern for you, that it was one successful company moving on to another successful company, but each one of those companies had to go through its own birth and growing pains. From there, what lessons have you learned along the way as an entrepreneur, multiple startups? What do you see entrepreneurs, startups, innovators doing today that if you could shake the living bejesus out of them, you'd say, don't do that? What are the kinds of things you're seeing happening today that you would counsel against?
I think the basics I would counsel against if you're not focused on your consumer, you're the ultimate buyer of your product, because you can have whatever you want, the smartest people, the most amount of money, the coolest technology, but if you don't have a customer, you are absolutely nowhere. You have no business. So, and as an angel investor, I actually spend a lot of time talking to the entrepreneur in a lot of different ways to figure out how obsessed are they with the customer. And a lot of them are not obsessed enough, I don't think. I think the best entrepreneurs are the ones who are completely living, eating, and breathing their customer. Everything to make their customer happy. I think entrepreneurs also, one of the hardest things about entrepreneurship for guys that have never started a business is they don't understand the psychological strength that's required to deal with the day in and day out, getting beat over the head with a hockey stick or a baseball bat. It's nonstop, and it's nothing but problems every day. And those of you who are running your own companies clearly understand that. But those first-time entrepreneurs, you try to tell them how difficult, not to dissuade them, but to give them a dose of reality. Because I think they're stuck watching TV shows like Silicon Valley and reading TechCrunch and reading all this garbage that glorifies what is extremely difficult to achieve. Not to difficult meaning it's difficult to make it through the gauntlet, you know? And I constantly try to give them tips on how to stay positive, how to get up in the morning with, a lot of fire, how to deal with certain types of adversity, but it's not for everybody, It's a tough business. It's a very, very tough business.
You talked about psychological difficulty. I found through my first two ventures that not only was it far more psychologically difficult than I had ever thought, and I think that was simply because of my blatant naivete, but it was also physically difficult because you're burning so much energy trying to solve problems. And the thing that I found is that unless an entrepreneur is very careful, he can damage the very relationships that he or she has with the most important people in the world to him, and that's his family.
Yeah.
It happened to me on a couple occasions that all of a sudden I was so immersed in the business that I neglected the things to do as a dad and as a husband. And fortunately, everything worked out beautifully, but I see that happen all too often. They just don't know the psychological toll it takes on the family.
I tell my interns and everyone I'm working with, the most important decision you'll ever make is your choice of spouse. I still believe it. I completely lucked out. You lucked out. It's the most important for that very reason. You need to have a team. You need to have people that are going to support you and people that are going to, put up with you, really, put up with your hours. It's not easy. I was on the road quite a bit when I was building my business. I had 3 young kids at home. Very, very difficult on myself, too, because, you miss your family. Just really tough. And that was a big driver for selling my company, too, was the fact that I was on the road too much and I just wasn't spending enough time at home and I was missing my kids growing up. And, I think that it's not an easy business. It's really very difficult. I'm with you. You have to learn to almost compartmentalize when you get home. Your family, they have no clue as to what you're going through, but you have to switch that little switch and be, daddy and whatever else and do the right thing and then go to war in the morning, But it's not easy. Yeah, it's requires, I think it's completely underestimated, the psychological difficulties of owning your own company, your own business. Very, very challenging. Yeah.
For me, it seems like my philosophy on people is that, I know what I know, and I think I know it pretty well, but I also know that there's a whole universe out there, and I try to surround myself with people who are absolutely brilliant at what they do, and then give them the freedom and the authority and the ability to go do what they do, best. What mindset, what philosophy have you developed about looking for the right people to run and manage one of Tien's companies?
It was an evolution. I think, like many entrepreneurs, have more of a control mentality, like, oh, that person can't do as good a job as me. So, to learn how to be a good identifier of talent and to learn how to be a good manager and ultimately to learn how to be a decent leader takes a long time and a lot of reading and studying and talking to people that have been there before. What I look depends on the business, but definitely looking for someone who's got super high integrity and, tremendous ethical standards, number one. And number two is, like I said earlier, the obsession on customer, critical. I don't know if it's probably because of my restaurant upbringing, but to me, the customer is central to everything. I know Bill Marriott and many others have said that their team's more important than the customer. In my mind, the customer's the most important. So I know it's probably against the book, philosophy, but I'm looking for people that just totally get it. And also guys that can identify and build a team of great people, because that's critical. You can't win the Super Bowl without having awesome players and chemistry. So having a leader who can identify that talent and then get the most out of that talent, it's really hard. But that's what we're looking for. People that can create a great environment, a fun environment, get people all excited, energized. So, yeah.
I want to shift gears a little bit, and that is I want to spend some time talking about your latest and greatest venture, which is the big idea CONNECTpreneur. Tell us how that came about. First of all, tell everybody what it is and how it came about, and then we'll get into it a little more.
Right. So my companies used to have no marketing budget. We had no money for advertising, no nothing. So, we started doing these happy hours, and then we'd rent out a restaurant like this. We'd have 20 CEOs come in the morning with a guest speaker, and then 20 new CEOs come in at lunch, same restaurant with same guest speaker, and we did this for years. And we did them like every quarter. So we'd have 50 CEOs, and then what I realized was that these guys didn't care about us. They didn't care about the guest speaker. They cared about each other. They cared about seeing peers. And these were CEOs pretty much, like the top person in the company. We were doing marketing to them. We got a lot of business out of it, but we realized that because they were staying late, the breakfast crew would leave at like 11, and then the lunch crew would leave at 3 p.m. And someone said to me, and I can't remember who, is like, why are you doing this? Just do one big event and have everybody come. So 6 years ago, this is our 6th year doing it, we started this CONNECTpreneur at the Tower Club in Tyson's Corner. We had, we had a fireside chat. We had 2 panels of entrepreneurs that were very accomplished, and 140 people or so, half of whom were CEOs and business owners. And it went over very well. The press covered it. It was good. It was great. I think in Northern Virginia and in the DC region, and even here, there's a lack of events where there's a lot of peer-to-peer networking, where people can share these kinds of stories, and they can, talk about doing deals together. So we then did a second one 3 months later, and a third one 3 months after that. We started expanding to bigger venues like the Tysons Marriott, the Fairview Park Marriott. We started doing every other event across the river, so we had 2 events per year in Bethesda at the Hyatt Bethesda. The Bethesda events were bigger, actually, I think, because the Maryland side was more starved for high-quality networking events. And now we're coming to Baltimore, February 28th. We're going to be in Baltimore at the Hilton Inner Harbor. And we have a great fireside chat guest, Michael Bronfein, who many of you know. Known Michael a long time, since he was the chairman of the BSO when I was on the board. but now he's on to Curio, which is a medical marijuana startup. And then we've got a couple of John's colleagues from TEDCO and Maryland Venture Fund will be there, and one of your colleagues, Parag, will be speaking on a panel. So that's sort of the long evolution, but we're going to probably have 300 to 350 in Baltimore. We had in December in Tyson's, or in Falls Church, we had Steve Case as our guest, and we had 550 people. Half of them are CEO/president level. And we usually get a bunch of angel investors. So generally 80 to 90 qualified angels per event. And we have companies that pitch too. So we have generally 8 to 10 companies, pretty promising startup companies that will pitch. And a lot of them are looking for money. Some of them are looking for product launch. So so come on out. CONNECTpreneur, February 28th. Early bird expires tonight, but we're going to extend it 7 days, I think. So thank you for letting me promote that.
Hey, my pleasure. And
thank you for being on our host committee as well.
Well,
so.
I'm humbled and I'm honored that you would have asked me. Thank you. And for those of you who may have an interest, you can. It's CONNECTpreneur.org. Or if you can't remember that, just shoot me an email and I'll send you all the links as to how you can register and get signed up. I went to one and I was absolutely blown away. It is an incredibly high quality event, and I strongly encourage everybody to attend if you can. The companies that you have pitched, is that done by invitation and vetting, or it's not just throw open the doors, first come, first serve, is it?
No, we have a committee.
Through a process, right?
Yeah, we have a committee that chooses the companies. We try to have diversity, so we want to have different industries represented. We want to have different age groups represented. We generally have an MBA team or an undergrad team as part of the group. A lot of seasoned entrepreneurs as well. And we also, they go through coaching. So we have 9 or 10 coaches, all experienced people, lawyers, accountants, former CMOs of public companies, very investment bankers. So they help vet the business idea, they vet the pitch, and even talk about how to present themselves when they're on stage. So so hopefully, you never get it right. There's always people that do their best. They've got a great idea, but they get nervous. And it's very easy to choke in front of a lot of people. It's happened to me many times. And, so you can put people through a lot of coaching, but that doesn't mean they're going to do a great job. So we try to do the best we can. And,
What I'd like to do is, if you don't mind, Tien, I'd like to open it up for some questions. If there are, please feel free out there. Anybody got a question? Yes, sir.
Did I ever think of throwing in the towel? Never, not once, not for a millisecond, never. I mean, I think I was blessed with being the child of immigrants that had their own business and controlled their own destiny. So, no, never have gone through that feeling at all. Have I gone through burnout? Yes, definitely. It's not fun. You got to come up with all kinds of tricks for your brain to get through that. But luckily for me, it's only happened a few times in the last 30 years. So, but no, I think, and I don't know why. Maybe I'm dumb, stupid. I don't know. Just kept doing what we were doing, and I think we had a deep down, we had faith in ourselves, and I was talking to someone the other day. Doubters, haters, whatever you want to call them, they are incredibly motivating. Like, I love it when someone says you can't do it or you have no chance, because I just keep my mouth shut, and it just makes me even more motivated and more determined, So it's good to have doubters, because you can use that sort of, energy inside to it's just good fuel to have, when you need it. So. Yes. Yeah, so
Thank you.
did we use a group like TEDCO, and what kind of advisors did we have? So I wish I knew about TEDCO. I wish I knew. I just didn't know. And now I think everybody knows about TEDCO, and every entrepreneur out there, you want them to know of the different resources. We have an incredible resource here in Maryland. We're so lucky to have TEDCO and John and his team and everything that they're doing. They even have money. It's not just advice. It's, it's, right? I mean, when I started my company, we didn't have any of that. We just got, I tell you, thank God we had this mission to serve the customer, thank God, because that was our true north, do the best job we could for the customer. Advisors, again, totally lucky. I met this guy through my former roommate. His name is Pete Ryan with Ryan and Wetmore. Many of you know Pete. Still to this day does all of our tax work, but Pete wound up being our accounting, tax, and financial advisor, helped us through acquisitions, helped us through exits. And then I met a lawyer named Andrew Sherman, who I know a lot of you know too. And Andrew was our lawyer. I met him at a networking event for a bunch of Chinese visitors of all things. And I said, hey, I like this guy. And when we needed legal work, I had his business card. He was with Greenberg Traurig at the time. My business partner looks at the card. He's like, wait a minute, don't they do those ads on TV? Greenberg and Betterman or whatever, I think. So and I said, no, this guy's legit. He was more than legitimate. He was great. He's still a good friend of mine. And he helped us when we had basically 4 or 5 employees. And he helped us all the way through the sale of our company when we had over 2,000. So thank you, Andrew, if you're listening. Yes. Hi.
Talk about what, if any, has been one big mistake.
Yeah. One big one or multiple ones? Because I have multiple ones. Made a lot of bad investments. Yeah, I think on the investing side, I've made 4 mistakes that I wound up zeroing out on, and they had one thing in common. They were first-time entrepreneurs that were a little too confident, a little overconfident. And one guy was the COO of a company that wound up being bought for high 9 figures. Another gentleman was the CFO of a pretty large institution. So there were another was an investment in China that was founded by 2 Chinese and 1 American. And, the American was a seasoned veteran of the technology wars. Ironically, he was the first one to bail out. He was the reason why I invested. So some really bad investments that way, just not really analyzing risk properly. And with people too, made a lot of bad hires along the way. That cost us big time. Like, it's true that a bad hire can really cost you. Strategically, made a bad acquisition of a company out on the West Coast when a couple years before we sold. Management team wasn't that great. The facilities weren't that great. We tried to make the most out of it. We made lemonade with the lemons, but that cost us a lot of money. That was a multi-million-dollar mistake. Signed a lease on a building in Arlington, Virginia, and paid, $500,000 a year. Never occupied the place, so just paid $500,000 for like 7 years. Just stupid thing. There's so many mistakes. I could write a book probably, but you guys that run businesses know what I'm talking about. There's everyone's got their own share of war stories. It's
Any questions from over here? We've got time for one more. All right. Now it's time to have just a little fun. 2 questions. Who's going to win the Super Bowl?
I think the Falcons look good. I don't know. I don't know who I want to win, but I'm a Giants fan, New York Giants. So being from Jersey, but I don't have a dog in the hunt. But the Falcons, the way they played against Green Bay was scary, and they're good, and they're underestimated. So whenever they don't talk about, the press doesn't talk about a team, you gotta wonder, maybe someone's missing something here.
Okay. Next question. Who would win a fight between Spider-Man or Batman?
Oh, wow. Wow. Spider-Man. I think Spider-Man, Yeah, I would say Spider-Man. but that would be a great fight to watch.
And finally, and just a little bit of trivia. How many square feet of pizza are eaten in the U.S. a year?
Square feet of pizza?
You're from a restaurant background, so
I'm going to try to figure that out for you. So you're looking at about, how many square feet of pizza? I'm going to say 2 billion.
Amazing. 2.4 billion square feet.
That's not bad.
90 square miles. Hey guys, that's it. We're done. I can't end it on a better note than that.
I'm from Jersey. I know pizza.
Hey, you do. Tien, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Everybody, Tien Wong.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I just want to say one thing. 1 billion of those square feet are in the state of New Jersey. Yeah. Because we have the best pizza. So anyway, thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you, Sean.
Just a couple of things. Number one is please go out and check out CONNECTpreneur. It is an awesome event. Number two is within the Startup Grind Global site, you can find the Columbia site. And we have our next 2 events already lined up. February 27th, we will have a gentleman who has been a friend of mine, a fellow entrepreneur, a mentor, a guide, a coach, and at times God. A gentleman by the name of Mr. Paul Reichs, the entrepreneur's doyen, who happened to be sitting here with us tonight. He'll be our special guest in February. And then March 28th, we have a gentleman, Dr. Jeffrey Hausfeld, who is an incredible physician. I won't get into all of his background, but he founded and is the chairman of the board of the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, and he currently serves as chairman and chief medical officer of a locally successful biotech company called Biofactura. And he's excited to tell all of you about what's going on in the biotech, health tech world. So those are 2 dates. Please mark them on your calendar.